Hello everyone, I hope you're having a fantastic day. Welcome back for another video for Baldur's Gate 3. I'm Ronan, and in today's video we are talking race for Baldur's Gate 3. Okay, Dragonborn. They are descendants of actual dragons, which is super dang cool from a lore perspective. And when you go to create one in game, like Larian Studios did an amazing job with the character customization just in general. But real specifically, the Dragonborn, in my opinion, looked so freaking cool. So they don't really actually gain too much compared to other races, but they do gain some unique things. So base racial speed, no big deal. They make sense. They're like an average size, so it would make sense they'd have a base racial movement speed. But they gain Draconic Ancestry, which essentially, depending on the type of Dragonborn you choose, you will get a cool special breath attack. Like, you know how dragons breathe fire? Well, you can do that as a Dragonborn, which is pretty sick. And each one has its own unique element that is tied to it and its own type of saving throw the enemy would have to make. For example, black, they shoot acid breath. Blue is lightning. Brass, fire. Bronze, lightning. Copper, acid. Gold, fire. Green, poison. Red, fire. Silver, cold. And white, cold. Out of all of those, all of them are dex saving throws for the enemy, except green, silver, and white, which are going to be constitution saving throws. Personally, I like white the best, just because it's an aesthetic for me, and I think ice dragons are really cool. But really, you go with whatever you want. It really comes down to, do you want to roleplay as someone who is literally an ancestor of a great legend, a dragon, and you get this cool breath attack, or not? So for me, I'm going to put them in B tier for now. And of course, at the end of this video, we will move some things around. The Dragonborn will have some unique dialogue in game, but from what I've seen in early access, and just from videos I've watched from Larian Studios, other races will have way more unique dialogue options. So from RP's perspective, I did want to keep that in mind. Okay, next is my personal favorite class, or race I should say, is that is going to be the Drow. I'm going to be having an evil playthrough, my first playthrough, and the Drow are essentially the dark elves, the evil elves of this game, and they have such a just cool lore. I really love them a lot, so I might be a little biased on this, but they do gain a lot. So first off, there are two different types of Drow. You have the Lolithsorn Drows, which are, or Lolthsorn, God, I butchered that name, which is basically the spider queen of them. She's an evil god, and they worship her, for lack of a better term. And you also have the other ones, which are the Seldarine Drows, which are more so of the good Drows, if that makes any sense. I'm not going to go too much into lore, because I do plan to make tons of lore videos about Baldur's Gate 3 in general. But for now, you could distinguish the two as one being kind of evil and the other is not. So what do you get as a Drow? As a Drow, you get your base racial speed, you get Fey Ancestry. Fey Ancestry is really awesome because this helps save you, because it gives you advantage on saving throws against being charmed, which is never a bad thing, and depending on the class you roll, and you know, that's just another benefit. But magic can't put you to sleep either, so you are immune to sleep. So for example, if you're a paladin and you chose this race, you would have immunity to disease and sleep, which is pretty cool. They gain rapier proficiency, short sword proficiency, hand crossbow, and superior dark vision. So when it comes to the proficiencies, they could be better. Personally, I'm gonna probably be rolling either Oathbreaker or a Rogue. So for a Rogue, they're really great because the rapier proficiency is something, depending on how you build your class, could be really useful and just really fun, in my opinion, to RP, kind of like a swashbuckler Drow. Short swords and hand crossbows. Hand crossbows are super powerful in this game, and there's some trait combinations that make it really OP. But I did want to talk about superior dark vision, because that's what really stands out for me for the Drow as well. Because there are a lot of other races that get dark vision, but we get superior dark vision, meaning we can see in the dark within 24 meters, which is really nice. And there's only one other race in the game that gets that, and that's a deep gnome. But you actually gain some spells as you level up, and they are the same for both sub races for the Drow. So when you make a Drow, you'll get the Dancing Lights Evocation spell, and this is basically a concentration spell that puts like will-o-wisp lights around a target to light up the area. You can cast it up to 18 meters within the target, and it's a 9-meter radius, which is pretty nice for any teammates that can't see in the dark. At level 3, you get a free spell, Fairy Fire, so you can use it once per long rest. And this is great because it makes the target turn visible, and attack rolls against the target have advantage. Never a bad thing, it's a pretty useful spell. And at level 5, you get Darkness once per long rest, which is really great, and it makes it so ranged attacks into or out of darkness can't be done. So you can cast this on yourself if you need to basically get out and don't want to get hit by ranged magic or arrows, or you can cast it on the enemy to stop a ranger or a wizard from basically blowing up your team from afar. So for me personally, right now, I would put them in A. However, the Drow get some crazy awesome unique dialogue options. I don't want to go into detail because I don't want to put too many spoilers in this video for people that don't want to be spoiled for the story. But just in Act 1 alone, depending on who you side with, there are some amazing, just awesome unique dialogue options. So I'm putting them in S for now, because I think with their lore in the actual universe is just really great. Okay, up next we have the Mighty Dwarves. And there are actually a few different types of dwarves in game, 3 specifically, and they all have slightly different things that they provide. But all dwarves, they get dwarven resilience, which is great because you have advantage on saving throws against poison, and you have resistance against poison damage. A little niche, but hey, it's free resistance. Weapon proficiency, you get battle axe, hand axe, light hammer, and warhammer, which all makes sense. I mean, it fits the theme of dwarves. The reason I find that to be pretty useful, if you're a martial class, it's useless because you're going to gain that proficiency anyway. But for classes that don't normally gain those proficiencies, you get it for free, which is pretty cool. So if you're a class that really wants to use a battle axe, well, now you can. And specifically for any monk players out there, for what I was told and the research I did, monks right now, at least from my understanding, any weapon that they have proficiency in will count as a monk weapon, which will then interact with all their different traits for the monk itself, which is really cool. So you could be a monk with a giant battle axe, like that's pretty awesome. But they also gain dark vision as well, and dark vision is never a bad thing. It's just not as far as the Drow superior dark vision. Dwarves will have some unique dialogue options from what I've seen in early access, but it's not going to be as many as the Drow. Could that change in Act 2 and 3? Oh, for sure. I'm basing this based off of what Larian Studios has provided and what you could see in early access. So based off of that alone, I'm thinking of putting them maybe in B tier, but above the Dragonborn. But let's talk about their subclasses. So you have the Gold Dwarf, which in my opinion is the superior dwarf. The Gold Dwarfs are really cool because you gain some awesome things, and specifically Dwarven Toughness. So they gain hit point maximum is increased by 1, and it increases by 1 every time you gain a level. So if you're going for a tanky class, like you want to be the tank, they are the sub race you really want to go. And if you combine that with toughness, that's 3 HP extra every level, which could definitely add up to be a decent amount. So I think Golden Dwarves are the best dwarves. However, you do have Shield Dwarves as well. And you also have the Dweger Dwarves too. Shield Dwarves, I mean, you gain light armor and medium armor proficiency, which is okay, I guess. but normally your class is going to determine that anyway, so I don't find that too useful. And the regular dwarves, and I apologize if I butcher the names of this stuff. I mean, you gain the same thing you gain with the other people, but you also gain sonic fortitude, which means you have an advantage on saving throws you make to avoid the end of the channel or stun condition on yourself. So I personally don't think it's that big of a deal on which dwarf you pick. I just have a preference of gold dwarves. So I'm putting them right here above Dragonborn. I think they're going to be more useful, but I don't think they're nearly as cool. Alright, next on our list are going to be the elves. And there are, even though drows are considered elves, they're their own race in this game. From the choice of elves, you have high elves and you have wood elves. So no matter what, as an elf, you're going to receive dark vision. You're going to gain keen senses, which means you have proficiency in perception. That alone is going to be super useful. Having good perception cannot be underrated in this game. You can miss a lot if your perception is really bad. They're going to have Fey ancestry as well, like we talked about with the Drow, which is pretty awesome. It's just free benefit. They have longsword, short sword, proficiencies, longbow, and short bow as well. So all elves are going to receive that, which is pretty great. But here's the difference. So high elves gain a high elf cantrip that you can cast. And this can go between Acid Splash, Blade Ward, Chill Touch, Dancing Lights, Firebolt, Friends, Light, Mage Hand, Mirror Illusion, Poison Spray, Ray of Frost, Shocking Grasp, and True Strike. Really, that's going to depend on how you want to build your actual class and whatnot. One thing to keep in mind though, you cannot redo your race when you respec your character. You can respec your class all you want. When you pick your race, you're stuck as that race, so keep that in mind. Wood elves, on the other hand, instead of having a cantrip, they gain Fleet of the Foot, which makes their base walking speed increase, which is nice. They're going to be faster. And they gain Mask of the Wild. Mask of the Wild makes you have proficiency in stealth. So if you're a class that doesn't normally gain stealth as proficiency, Wood elves could really make a difference for that. Like stealthy rangers, gloomstalkers, Wood elves would probably be a pretty good choice. So that being said, weapon wise, you know, that really goes down to class. If you're a class that normally can't use those weapons, well, now you can. I think elves, though, elves in general, I'm gonna put them in A. I think they have some really great racial traits that you can gain, especially the wood elves. But the dialogue options, they are gonna have more, in my opinion, than the Dragonborn. And I think they're better than dwarves. So I'm putting them in A tier for now. Okay, up next you have the Githyanki. And this race is basically the aliens of Baldur's Gate 3, if that makes sense, because they're not from that realm. The Githyanki in concept are really cool. I mean, we all know based off the trailers, and if you played early access and whatnot, the big bad are the Mind Flayers, and you're trying to basically find out what they're doing, for lack of a better term, without giving out spoilers. And the Githyanki hunt them. Like, that's their whole thing. The Mind Flayers are their mortal enemies. So you're going to have a lot of cool dialogue options if you play a Githyanki. And they have some really great actual racial features as well. One thing I did want to point out, they do not gain dark vision, which kind of sucks, because in the Underdark and other things like that, you will have to find ways to overcome that if you want to actually save yourself from having disadvantage on attack rolls and stuff. But that's really easy to overcome. But something I did want to mention, they are one of the few races that aren't human that don't gain dark vision. But they do have the base racial speed. They gain light armor, medium armor, proficiencies, short sword, long sword, great sword as well, which is pretty cool. And they get some really awesome spells for free for leveling up. So you get Mage Hand just at level 1, which is nice, and they gain their own special jump spell that you get at level 3, and they get Misty Step at level 5. So, I mean, I know it's only once per long rest, but Misty Step is super useful in this game. So that is really nice. So based off of that, I'm thinking of putting them either high A or maybe even S. I don't know. You know, I'm gonna put them in S tier for now, just because I think those actual traits are pretty useful. If you don't find gaining anything like that, like the great sword proficiencies and stuff like that, and you're doing it based off the spells alone, they're still really useful. And the fact that they're gonna have some great dialogue options, yeah, I'm keeping them up here. And I imagine as we get later in the game and actually deal with the mind flayers more so like in person in game, they'll have even more dialogue. That's an assumption, I don't know for sure, so I'm gonna put them in S and feel okay with it. Okay, next on our list is going to be the gnomes, and I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of gnomes. They're so short, I don't like it. Like, I just don't see a gnome barbarian or anything like that being scary. Some people really like them though, and they do have some pretty interesting racial abilities that you gain, which has some really nice benefits. So just for being a gnome in general, you do get gnome cunning, which means you have advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. So that's pretty great. You already get 3 of those just for being a gnome in general. And that's pretty big. That's a lot of saving throw advantage. And if you combine that with some other classes, yeah, you got a lot of coverage. But the 3 different sub races they have, you have the Deep Gnome. They get superior dark vision, which mentioned before is better than regular dark vision, and they're the only other race besides Drow to get that, which is pretty cool. And they also get stone camouflage, which means you have advantage on stealth checks. So even if you aren't normally a stealthy class, you still gain advantage on it, which is pretty cool. Forest gnomes are pretty much what they sound like, gnomes of the forest. They get regular dark vision, but they also get the spell Speak with Animals. And if you have played any other Larian Studio game, you would know Bespeak is such an amazing thing to have. Being able to speak with animals is going to unlock a lot for you in this game. A lot. And rock gnomes are the 3rd subrace for gnomes. They gain dark vision as well, and they get Artificer's Lore, which adds twice your proficiency bonus to history checks. So that could become really useful as well. When it comes to their unique dialogue options, they will have some, but from what I've seen, there hasn't been too many. But then again, you know, we've only played Act 1. I didn't get to play Act 2 or 3, so I don't know how much more they'll have later in the game. But for me, I'm going to put them either in high B or low A. I guess it depends on the subrace that you choose. If you go Forest Gnome, I'm saying A. If you don't, I'm gonna put them in B. Maybe they'll be A anyway, because gaining all the saving throw advantage is going to be pretty nice from Gnome Cunning. Jeez. So, I don't know. One of those two. I'll put them in high B for now. Okay. So now we come to the half-elves. And I'm not even sure how to go about judging this race on how useful they are, because they are literally what they sound like. They're in half elf. They could be half high elf, half wood elf, or half drow. No matter which one you pick, you're going to have the same racial feats similar to those. So they gain Fey ancestry and regular dark vision, which is pretty cool. So no matter what, you get those just for being a half elf. If you're a half high elf, as mentioned before, you get to choose one of their cantrips. If you are a half wood elf, you get Fleet of Foot and Mask of the Wild, which is pretty cool. And if you're a half drow, you gain the Dancing Lights, you gain Fairy Fire and Darkness. So really, these are hard to pick because you're going to have unique dialogue options depending on what half elf you choose. All of them are useful though. I'm not sure where to put them on this list, because like if you're a half drow or a half wood elf, I think you're going to be higher. If you're a half high elf, I would put you lower. So I'm going to put them kind of in B for now, and you can just, you know, move it wherever you see fit depending on which kind of half elf you go. But they do not gain the proficiencies that the other elves gain, so keep that in mind. Okay, now we have the half-orcs, and let me tell you, if you do not care about what your race does storyline-wise, and you're going for a melee build, half-orcs are so goddamn good. Their racial traits are freaking amazing, especially for anyone that's going a melee crit build. Whew, better watch out. They are so good. Alright, so half-orcs, they get dark vision, which is pretty cool. They get relentless endurance, which is a lifesaver. Essentially, relentless endurance, once per long rest. If you were to have your HP go to 0, instead you can drop it to 1 HP. It's a get out of free jail card. It's pretty awesome, and I cannot tell you, if you don't know what you're doing and you make a mistake, this could literally save you. Or even if you do know what you're doing, like maybe the enemy gets a crit on you, well, guess what? This could save you. But they also gain savage attacks. Savage attacks are crazy good for crit builds. Like if you're a champion, which is great because they get increased crit chance, the fighter subclass, and you go half orc, you're going to be really set. So savage attacks, when you roll a critical hit with your melee weapon attack, you can roll one of the weapon's damage dice one additional time and add the extra damage to the critical hit. So when half orcs crit, they obliterate, like they mutilate the enemy because they add so much extra damage. It's really good, especially if you use a two-hander because they already hit like a monster. I mean, combine that with great weapon fighting as well for the extra plus 10 damage. Like, yeah, it's pretty crazy. But they also gain menacing, which is pretty cool because they also gain proficiency in intimidation, which makes sense from the lore of half orcs. So for me, if you're going from a pure, I want to be min-max crit machine, half orc would be S tier in my opinion. But that's not what this tier list is about. This is taking into account the world itself and your dialogue options and things like that. So I'm going to put them in A tier. I don't know how many unique dialogue options they will have. They have some. I don't think it's nearly as much as others in the game, but their racial abilities are just so good for combat that I feel like if I don't at least put them in A tier, I wouldn't do them justice. Okay, next we have the halflings. And one thing I did want to point out, because I don't think I actually explained it on this video, is the base racial speed, for the most part, is going to be the same for majority of actual races, except a few. The distance that the halflings actually move is 9 meters. Gold, shield, and lightfoot dwarves and halflings and strongheart halflings move 7.5 meters per turn. And wood elves have 10.5 meters per turn since they get the benefit of increased movement. So I did want to just throw that out there in case anyone didn't understand what I was saying for that. But the halflings, they have lightfoot halflings. So you get naturally stealthy, which makes you skilled at concealment. You have proficiency in stealth checks, which is never a bad thing. And as mentioned, you are a little bit more speedy on your feet, I guess you could say. And then you have strongheart halflings, which gain strongheart resilience, which is pretty cool because you have advantage on saving throws against poison and resistance to it as well. So kind of similar to the dwarves we talked about earlier. And all halflings, no matter what sub race you choose, they get lucky. Lucky is pretty cool because when you roll a 1 for an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you can re-roll the dice and must use the new roll. That is pretty damn good. Who likes rolling nat ones? No one does because it screws up what you're trying to do. Well, guess what? With halflings, you don't really have to worry about that. They get lucky. So, dialogue option, I mean, it's kind of like some of the other races we talked about. I mean, they get some, but really not that many. I guess it really depends. If the self-check thing is good for you, they may be higher than some other races. I'm gonna put them in B tier, but I'm not sure where. Probably above Dwarves. I'm actually going to save humans for last, and we'll talk about that why and a reason, or why that is in a minute. But up next, you got Tieflings. And Tieflings, in my opinion, are really cool. When it comes to aesthetics, they're awesome. Like, whether you're male or female, your character customization is top tier, and it's up there with Dragonborn, in my opinion. But no matter what, you get Dark Vision and Hellish Resistance. We already know what Dark Vision is, but Hellish Resistance gives you 50% damage reduction on fire attacks if they hit you. A little niche, but 50% less damage is pretty nice. And there are actually 3 different types of Tieflings you can go, so let's break those down. So the first Tiefling you could choose is the Asmodeus Tieflings, and they're pretty cool because they gain 3 different spells. One of them's a cantrip. Thaumaturgy is really nice. It is a cantrip that allows you to grant yourself advantage on intimidation and performance checks, which is going to be pretty nice because who doesn't like gaining advantage on that? If you're doing that, it's probably for a story reason, so doing it better is never a bad thing. They gain Hellish Rebuke, which is pretty cool. You can use it once per long rest at level 3s when you gain it. It's a reaction spell, so if you would normally get hit in combat, well, you can use that to surround the attacker in Hellish Flames. Pretty nice for free damage. And they gain Darkness as well. So that's pretty cool. Those 3 spells alone are not bad at all. The second type of Tiefling you can choose from is the Mephistopheles Tiefling. And they're pretty cool because you actually gain a little bit of different things. So with them, you gain the Mage Hand Conjuration spell, and Mage Hand is pretty useful. At level 3, you gain Burning Hands, which you can cast once per long rest. It's a spell where you shoot fire outstretched from your fingers and ignite the enemy on fire. Not bad. It is a pretty short range though, so you got to keep that in mind. If you're not a melee type character or one that goes in melee range, that spell is going to be useless to you. And they gain Flame Blade once per long rest as well, which is really cool because Flame Blade literally is conjuring a flaming sword in your hand. It deals 3d6 fire damage and sheds bright light in a 3 meter radius and dim light in 6 meters. And can be unequipped and equipped again, but has to stay on the spellcaster's possession. So it's a free spell in your offhand, which is pretty cool. I guess technically it could be in your main hand, but why would you not already have a weapon in your main hand anyway? So I mean that could be useful, but depending on what class you play, it could also not be. And then the final Tieflings are the Zeriel Tieflings, which are really, really cool. They get the same cantrip as Asmodeus Tieflings as well. However, they also gain Searing Smite at level 3, which basically just puts your weapon on fire, so when you attack, you do fire damage. And they gain Branding Smite once per long rest, which is pretty damn cool. Normally a paladin spell, and it does radiant damage. Your weapon gleams with this great cool light. Basically, when you attack the enemy, it prevents them from turning invisible as well. Pretty damn cool. The spell looks pretty cool in game as well. The Zeriel Tieflings kind of remind me of, like, if you're going to be a paladin, that's the Tiefling you should go. It's just like fits their lore. So all that being said, let's go ahead and put Tieflings either low A or high B, and we're going to revisit all these again in a minute. I'm going to put them in low A for now. Okay, and the last and final race that we have is going to be the generic human. And I gotta say, them along with some other races got hit a little harder than most when it came to the stat change to where races are no longer tied to stats. Because right now, there's really nothing unique about humans. Humans used to gain +1 in all their ability stats, which was really great because then, I mean, it's a free +1 in all stats. So for min-maxing, that was pretty useful. and they really had no negative downside. But right now, because they removed that and you just get +2 in any stat and +1 in any stat just for making a character, there's nothing unique about them at all. I know they're going to get something, and I think it's either some weapon or armor proficiencies, but that's not a big deal in my opinion, because normally your class is going to determine the type of proficiencies you can use unless you're going for something really specific. Dialogue options, I mean, there's just humans, so there's really not that many unique ones. I'm putting them in D tier. Like, they're not even in C, they're straight up D tier. So some other races that got hit a little harder are going to be the shield dwarves. They used to get +2 in 2 different stats, and now they don't. I believe it was strength and constitution, if I remember correctly, and they don't anymore. So humans aren't the only ones that got hit by that, but they got hit the hardest. There's nothing cool about them. And you know, this is an opinionated video, so you could totally disagree with me. I mean, you think they're S tier, but I don't. And unless they get something unique for being a human that we don't know about yet, I don't know, man. RPing as a human just doesn't seem fun to me. Alright, so let's go back to everyone, because we need to decide this list. I got no one in C tier. And I feel like maybe some people should be. So let's go to thinking about RP reasons. I definitely still think Drow and Githyanki are going to be up top. You can interchange them how you want, but I definitely think they're still going to be S tier if you combine that with their racial skills. I do think orcs and tieflings should stay A tier. I think elves are A tier if you are only a wood elf. If not, you're B tier. Half elves, A tier if you're a wood elf. Or drow. If not, you are B tier. So keep that in mind. I think I'm not sure about the halflings, the dwarves, and gnomes. Gnomes do get gnome cunning. Alright, so this is what we're going to do. I am going to say gnomes, if you get the speak of animals, go forest gnome, low A, high B. If you don't, they're low B, maybe high C. So keep that in mind. Halflings, I mean, Lucky is really good, but this isn't based off of combat alone. This is based off the world as well, and I don't think they get that many great options. I'm going C. If having Lucky is, you know, really great for you, maybe they're higher. I'm putting them in C. It's not that big deal to me. I think it's kind of cool to get in that one every once in a while, just because it adds some more flavor to combat. So I'm putting them in C tier. Dwarves are hard to say. Them with their racial change when it comes to their stats, I mean, they got hit a little bit harder. I still think gold dwarves are better than the rest, but that's personal preference. I'm fine leaving them in B. Dragonborn's hard to say. Like the breath attack they get is really cool. To me personally though, it's not something I take into account. I think they just look really sick and they have some cool dialogue options. So I'm going to C tier maybe. Half-orcs, I'm putting them in low A. They get some unique dialogue options, not that much from what I've seen so far, but they do just, they're so great in combat as well. So this is the tier list I'm doing. I could talk all day about why I could change things, but this is what I personally think for my tier list. You could totally disagree, and I would love to hear your thoughts down below. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe, because I will be making content throughout my journey in Baldur's Gate 3, lore videos, build videos, and more. So if you like that kind of stuff, please stay to the channel, because it will be coming. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.